If shame came from certain choices, boundaries, or lack of it, or relationships, don't return to them expecting a different outcome. Start setting new boundaries. Start saying no to what drains you. Start learning how to love yourself. Start learning how to make better choices. Start choosing peace over performance. Start building self-trust. Start keeping promises to yourself, following through, learning to show up for yourself again. Stop surviving. It's time to live now. Stop jumping into relationships that are not serving you. Stop putting yourself in places where people look down upon you. Stop going to rooms where you're not invited. Hey friend, welcome to the Rise and Rebuild podcast. This is your space to breathe again. A space for women of color, single women and single mothers to finally feel seen, deeply supported, and reminded that you don't have to do this journey alone. My name is Lydia, a certified life coach and founder of Break the Cycle Global and a proud cycle breaker. Around here, we don't just talk about life. We get real about it. The messy, the magical, and everything in between. From breaking unhealthy cycles to mastering your mindset, navigating relationships, parenting, career, money, faith, healing, and so much more. This is where we rebuild when life doesn't go as planned. I know what it's like to feel stuck because I've been there. And now my heart beats for women like you, ready to rise up and embrace love, abundance, and confidence. So whether you're carrying painful wounds, facing another hard season, or simply ready for a fresh start, you are in the right place, my friend. Grab your coffee, warm your tea, and welcome home. Because this is where we break, heal, and rebuild together. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of the Rise and Rebuild podcast. I am so glad you're here. If you've been following us the last few weeks, you know we've been talking about breaking cycles, healing what's been hidden in your life, and reclaiming the parts of you that got buried under fear, pain, or even avoiding. If you haven't, please go back and listen to our previous episodes so that you can catch up. But today we are going to talk about shame. Because one of the biggest things that quietly keeps us from truly healing is what we call shame. And honestly, this episode was inspired by a message I received recently from one of you, and it kind of touched my heart. Let me see if I can read it for you guys. Lydia, I am struggling with so much shame and regret over my failed marriage. I keep replaying everything in my head, what I said, what I didn't do, what I should have done, or how harder I should have tried. I just can't seem to forgive myself, even though I know God has forgiven me. I'm carrying this heavy weight that won't just go away. My friends, when I read that message, my heart broke into pieces a little bit. Not just for her, but for every woman who's ever felt that way. Because I know that weight. I have carried it too. I know the weight of shame. I have walked that walk, the ugly walk of shame. I have been there. The shame of what didn't work out. The guilt of what you wish you could have done or, would have done better. That quiet replay of if only I had tried harder or known better, I would have done this, I would have said this, I would be doing this, And that is why today I just want to talk about that kind of shame. Because so many of us are still living under it, even when we've already been forgiven, even when we have actually moved on with our lives, even when other people no longer use that shame against us, but we still live under the weight of that shame. So if you've ever looked back and thought, if only I had known better, or how did I even let this happen? Or I know, as I said, God has forgiven me. The grace of God is always sufficient, but you just can't forgive yourself. Then this episode is for you. I want you to lean in and let's have a conversation. And I want you to hear me say this before we dive in. I know I always say this at the very end of every episode, but I think it's very important for me at this point to just pause and really let you hear me say this. Your past may explain you, but it does not define you. Let me repeat that so that it sinks in your head. Your past, rather, may explain you, but it doesn't define you. And no matter how heavy the shame feels, there's always a way to release it and start to walk in peace again. Okay? Please let that sink in. Your past does not define you. You're not defined by what you did or what didn't do in the past. Okay, now let's talk about what shame really does. Shame, to be honest, is one of the most powerful silencers there is. It can make you go silent for ages. It doesn't just make you feel bad about a mistake or something that happened to you or didn't happen to you. Shame actually convinces you that you're the mistake. The audacity of shame, let me tell you. Shame can tell you you're unworthy. It can tell and whisper to you, very loudly, by the way, that you're broken. You don't even deserve a new start. You won't change. That's who you are. Things will never work out for you. That is what shame can do and more. And when shame takes root, it starts to shape everything around you. It begins to shape how you see yourself, how you show up, how you love, and even how you let yourself be loved by other people. You start hiding. Shame can make you isolate. Shame can even make you overcompensate, try to earn love or prove worth that was never even meant to be earned in the first place. That is what shame can do. It can make you run away and never face what it is that you're going through. But here's something I want you to remember and maybe even write it down. God, the creator, my God, your God, can never use shame to change you or even motivate you. He does not do that. That is not his language. Shame is the enemy's tool to keep you silent and stuck. And here's the thing about shame. It only thrives and grows in silence, period. The moment you bring it into the light, it starts to lose its grip. Whether that means being honest with yourself, being honest with God, or even opening up to one trusted person, getting coaching, therapy, whatever that looks like for you, that is where freedom begins and starts from when you bring shame to the light. You've probably heard this saying. People say it lightly, but I love that saying as well. You can't shame the shameless. And that is very true. Once a person has owned their own story, their choices, their truth, nobody else can use it to define them. That is where and when shame loses its power. So you bring your shame to the light and let it lose its power. All right? So before we go deeper, I want to slow down and unpack something here. Shame doesn't really walk alone. It travels with its cousins. I call them cousins. There's guilt, cousin guilt, there's blame, then there's regret. Together, these cousins build the walls that keep you and I stuck. Shame attacks who you are as a person. Shame tells you there's something wrong with you. Guilt attacks what you did, like you made a mistake. And then blame points fingers at you or someone else, and you kind of start blaming yourself. It's all my fault, or it's somebody else's fault. And regret starts to replay the past in your mind. The things you say to yourself, like, if only I had done it differently, if only, if only, if only. That is regret. Now, guilt on its own isn't always a bad thing. It can actually be a doorway. The way I see it, it can be a doorway, a moment that leads you back to repentance, or a moment that helps you start to do things differently next time. But shame keeps you trapped in unworthiness. And that blame, it keeps you powerless because it keeps the focus on what cannot be changed. And then regret, that one steals your joy and peace and love away one thought at a time. Every time you think about it and regret it, it just kind of steals your peace. So it is important for you to understand that when these four cousins work together, that is shame, guilt, blame, and regret, they don't just affect how you feel. They start to shape how you live, how you love, and how you let others love you. They keep you even from showing up fully. You can never occupy space the way you should because of shame. They keep you from believing again, from dreaming again, from trusting that you can even start over again. That is the worst thing about shame. And I know this too well because I've lived it. I've lived it myself. For me, shame hit hardest when I became a single mother. I carried blame, guilt, and regret like they were part of my name. I blamed myself for what went wrong, for the choices that led me there, I felt guilty for what my children didn't have and what they went through, and I regretted ignoring the signs from the very start. I even regretted staying too long, trying to fix other people, and trying to fix everything that only God could heal. There were nights I'd lie and stay awake, just trying to replay every decision, every memory, everything that I could have done right. And shame in its power would whisper, "You failed. You're broken. You're unworthy. You won't change. This is just who you are." And the worst is, it wasn't just my voice in my head, it was other people's voices too. The whispers, the looks, the gossips, the quiet judgments, sometimes disguised as concern. That external shame. Honestly, for me, that was the worst. When other people define you or they define your story before you even do, I believe that's even worse than the internal shame you face. And maybe, my friend, you felt that too. You're probably right now rebuilding your life quietly, showing up for yourself, for your children, for your family, doing your best, one step at a time, healing here and there. And still, you feel that sting of people's opinions. That can be hard. And I want to acknowledge that. And the hardest part about shame is that over time, you start to actually believe those labels. You start calling yourself things like broken, like I used to call myself, damaged, right? Not worthy. You call yourself even some names that are not even worth mentioning on this podcast. And when you start to live from that place of labeling yourself negatively, you naturally just stop expecting beauty to rise from your own ashes. You won't even see the grace of God right in front of your eyes because of shame. But today, I want you to hear it from someone who's walked that walk of shame. You are not broken. You're buried. And buried things are meant to rise. Because think for a minute. Broken means beyond repair. When we say something is broken, we say it's beyond repair, right? But buried means transformation. It means something new is forming in the dark. And that is the label I want you to adopt from this moment on, that you're not broken. You're not beyond repair. You're just buried. And soon and very soon, I know that you will rise again. So reject the labels that shame brings your way and adopt the new labels that I'm telling you. You're worthy. Do not allow shame to label you otherwise. Okay? So how do you begin to heal shame and walk in freedom? How do you do that? First thing, you start by telling the truth to yourself, to other people, to God. Not to shame yourself, but to free yourself. Say what happened. Stop softening it. Stop sugarcoating it. Just say it as it is, as ugly as it is. Sometimes we minimize our own pain because we think that makes us strong. But friend, pretending you're fine doesn't help. It doesn't even heal you. It just continues to hide you longer. And you can't heal what you won't name. Say it out loud if you need to. The way I did myself. I said, yes, I did that. I was in that relationship. That happened. Yes, I wish I could have done it differently, but that happened. I did it. I did that. I owned my part of the story. Truth is the doorway to freedom. It may sting for a moment, but it will save you from a lifetime of pretending. So just say the truth. If somebody asks you and if they need to know what happened, tell them as it was, if they're worth it. Then comes the part that we often skip, taking responsibility. I know this one is tough, but as I said, healing requires truth, honesty, and responsibility. You have to own your part. There's no way around it. Your choices, your patterns, your silence, your avoidance. And taking responsibility isn't about self-blame. You're not blaming yourself, no. It's about reclaiming your power. Because as long as you're blaming someone else, as long as you're living in victimhood, as long as you're always feeling like, why me, why me, why me, you're giving that person or those things control over your own healing. You can't change what you want on. You have to just take responsibility for your own mistakes or whatever happened, or your part in whatever happened. And maybe you are not the one at fault, and that's okay. I acknowledge that. Maybe someone hurt you deeply, but healing isn't about keeping score. It isn't about them at this moment. It is about your life and your part in it. And so this is you saying, this was my life, this was my part in it, and now I'm choosing to write a different story. That is how you take responsibility. And that is how you start to rebuild that self-trust by being honest with yourself, even when it hurts. So while you really want to blame other people for hurting you, for letting you down, for leaving you with children, right? I know that too well. But just get honest with yourself. What was your role in the whole dynamic? The next, take it to God, not through guilt, but through surrender. As I said, God doesn't use shame to change you or motivate you. He doesn't even point fingers or say, you should have known better, right? That is not what God does. He says, come closer. Let's reason together. Let's deal with this together. Just tell him the truth. Just say, Lord, this is what I did. This is what I thought. This is where I was. This is what I'm still struggling with. But you know what? I surrender it all to you. Your Father in heaven wants to hear that from you. Grace can only feel what honesty reveals. The sufficient grace of God can only feel what honesty reveals. And sometimes, my friend, healing doesn't come in a loud breakthrough. It comes in quiet moments of surrender with God, when you stop running and let God meet you right in the mess. Sometimes we just want to clean up or pretend before God. We are not hurting. We are not going through pain. We are not disappointed. No, go with it to God. Then forgive yourself. I know that's easier said than done, right? Especially if you've lived with guilt for years. But you can't keep punishing yourself for what grace already paid for. Seriously. You just have to wake up one morning and say, Lydia, I forgive you for not knowing better, for staying in that dynamic for so long. Forgiving yourself isn't about saying it didn't matter. No, it's saying this mattered, but it doesn't have to define me anymore. You're not what happened to you, and you're not the mistakes you made. You made a mistake, but you are not the mistakes. So every single day, my friend, remind yourself you did the best you could with what you knew then. And now that you know better, you're going to do better. That is redemption. That is growth. Forgive yourself, my friends. Why is it so easy to forgive other people, but you cannot forgive yourself? Extend the same grace you're extending to other people to yourself. And finally, change the pattern, change the cycle, break the cycle. Because healing is not just about emotional, it's also practical. If shame came from certain choices, boundaries, or lack of it, or relationships, don't return to them expecting a different outcome. Start setting new boundaries. Start saying no to what drains you. Start learning how to love yourself. Start learning how to make better choices. Start choosing peace over performance. Start building self-trust. Start keeping promises to yourself, following through, learning to show up for yourself again. Stop surviving. It's time to live now. Stop jumping into relationships that are not serving you. Stop putting yourself in places where people look down upon you. Stop going to rooms where you're not invited. Because healing is not about letting go of the past. It's also about walking differently into your future. You have to choose different now. You have to gather the strength and choose different, dear friend. It's about becoming the woman who has learned her lessons, who has grown, and who is not letting her mistakes become her identity. Friend, I don't want you to let your mistakes define you or your past by not making better choices going forward. So hear me on this. Imagine God is not disappointed in you. He's not standing over you with a list of your failures. He's right there in the middle of the mess, still choosing you. Why can't you choose yourself? Scripture, Isaiah 61 to be specific, says that God gives beauty for ashes. But you've got to hand him the ashes first. He gives beauty for ashes. Give him your ashes. Let him give you beauty. You can't hold guilt in one hand and grace on the other. You have to let go of one to receive the other. Simple. And when you do, something shifts. Shame starts to lose its power, its grip over you. That guilt turns into growth, and regret, Mr. Regret, becomes revelation. Because now you're starting to heal, you're learning your lessons, you're not going back to where you were, you don't live there anymore. And slowly by slowly, you can look back without that sting, that big lump in your throat, and say to yourself, this chapter of my life, my story was painful, but it shaped me. I'm not embarrassed about it. I own it. This is my story, and it shaped me, because healing doesn't mean you forget. We are not forgetting what hurt. It means you now remember it differently. You now see it as a lesson and not a label. Drop those labels. So I want you to do yourself a favor. As you go through this week, ask yourself, what shame do I need to release so I can rise again? What areas in your life are you ashamed about? What areas in your life are you embarrassed about? What areas in your life are people shaming you for? You need to release it so that you can rise again. And then use these steps we've talked about today to start healing that part of you. Start to walk in freedom. Let shame lose its grip. It doesn't have to be your identity. All right? All right, my friend. That's all for today's episode. But before I go, I want to speak to somebody here, to the woman that feels the nudge in your spirit, that whisper saying it's time to put the shame down and rise. Please come hang out with me in my upcoming masterclass this month. I have a masterclass that's for you. It's called Survive No More, Thrive in Your Purpose, Grow in Your Prosperity. The sign-up link is in the show notes. Go ahead and sign up and I'll see you then. You've survived for so long, and that's enough. Now it's your turn to thrive. So if that is you, I want you in. Come join me. Let's talk about it, okay? And please subscribe to this podcast on YouTube and follow on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening on your favorite platforms. And please give us a 5-star rating. That way, more people actually find this space and we can all be one big family that is healing and rising, okay? Remember this, my friend. Your past does not define you. Your pain does not disqualify you, and your story is still being written. So stay grounded, stay faithful, and stay grateful.